Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me make sure I am up. This is a early morning show. It is 2:47 in the a.m. I've just let the dogs out. No, seriously. We have two dogs, Pitsu and Bo. Bo was a rescue pit bull. I thought I was doing something nice. And my wife wanted to have something a little bit bigger when she walked Pitsu. He has somewhat of a weak bladder. Love him to death. He has a weak bladder. And so we finally come up with an arrangement of making sure that Bo doesn't necessarily pee in the house with his weak bladder. So part of that plan, part of that strategy is letting him out early in the morning. I tend to be up, so I tend to be the one to do it. My wife tends to be the one who's more loving, so she tends to be the one who handles the dogs, like walking them before she goes to work and that type of stuff. So, but that being said, I'm on doggy duty. I don't necessarily like kids. People already know I don't like kids, and yet I'm stuck doing doggy duty. If nothing else, look, if you're with a guy and you love kids and he doesn't, get him a dog. Get him a dog. That's his gateway. That's his intermediary. That's the thing that allows him to get from point A to point B. My wife's not slick getting Pitsu. We got Pitsu as a puppy. This is a complete segue from the story. We got Pitsu as a puppy. I've never had a puppy before, and I've never had a male puppy before. We've had female dogs. Never had a male. And he's a boy. He's a boy. Like there's nothing else to say about it. The behavior and everything else, hard-headed like nobody's business. Hard-headed as can be. We got him. He was a nipper. The guy, 3 people had him before we got him. He was a nipper, meaning he used to come. He used to like bite. That's the way he used to behave. Not intentional, not being malicious. He just walk up. We had to break him out of that. So we break him out of it, and he licks. So instead of before we used to bite, he realizes, oh right, when I do this, people don't like this. So he would come by and lick, drive-by licks, and you'd be like, God damn it. Cut that shit out. Stop it. It's like, but he would do it. And you realize, just like, look, from where he was to where he is, I'll take it. I'll take it. Love both of them. Wouldn't trade them for the world. I ended up getting Bo. Bo was a rescue. Bo had certain other personality quirks where we think he was abused or something. They love each other to death. At some point, they formed into a pack. Can't even take him to daycare because for the most part they function like a pack. Like this is my bro. This is my brother. So you have a pit bull Shih Tzu mix, Pitsu, who's the asshole of the bunch, and you have the 70-pound dog Bo, who walks around and is just replicating the behavior of Pitsu, which scares the hell out of some people. They don't care if Pitsu does it. It's Bo. When Bo barks and they're like, oh my god, this 70-pound dog is flipping out. Don't know, it's the nicest dog on the planet, cowardly as cowardly can be. But he's a 70-pound lapdog. He's a 70-pound lapdog. That has nothing to do with what I'm about to talk about. Let's talk about healthcare. Let's talk about healthcare. Specifically, healthcare in America and what healthcare needs to be and what healthcare should be. I'm going to use my own personal story for this. I don't necessarily like delve purely into details of my life, especially weird or odd details of my life. But I will do so if it makes a point. And I kind of want to get this point across with what healthcare is like in this country versus abroad, what healthcare should be, what it should be. Just if you had this philosophical basis of what healthcare should be, what it shouldn't be, what are those things? Delineate, define your boundaries. Healthcare in the United States is the worst of all Western nations. Take a look at this. Let's start there. How bad is United States healthcare? Among high-income nations, it's the worst, study says. Now, I was looking for a more recent study, but the study that this guy's talking about is this guy. Lisa, come on. U.S. healthcare ranked worst in the developed world. The United States healthcare system has been subject to heated debate over the past decade, But one thing that has remained consistent is the level of performance, which has been ranked as the worst among industrialized nations for the 5th time according to the 2014 Commonwealth Fund survey of 2014. UK ranked best, with Switzerland following a close second. The Commonwealth Fund reports compares the United States with 10 other nations: France, Australia, Germany, Canada, Sweden, New Zealand, Norway, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the UK, were all judged to be superior based on various factors. This include quality of care, access to doctors, equity throughout the country. Results on the study rely on data from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development for the World Health Organization and interviews from physicians and patients. Is this really shocking? Is this really shocking? Now, I've made the point before. I've made the point on multiple occasions, but I like this. I don't like this. I like the fact that I'm right on this. You have a capitalistic system. I made the point earlier that the assumption is that because the United States spends $1 trillion on military, and I'm adding black budget projects and so forth, but $1 trillion on military, that you're getting something that's equivalent to $1 trillion worth of some kind of labor relation. You're not. You spend like 3 to 4 times more on healthcare for worse results. You live in a capitalistic system. The goal in any of these capitalistic enterprises is not the thing itself. Meaning, if you're spending $1 trillion on military, the goal in that is not to provide military. The goal is to get the profit, meaning the people who are involved in that process of reaping the benefits from that. The goal is to reap profits. Yes, we're going to do military stuff, but our goal in this is profit. I am in a company to maximize my profits. I'm not in a company necessarily to build your engines. Yes, I'm going to build your engine. Yes, I'm going to build your plane. I'm going to give you a fucking awesome plane. I'm going to build it to spec to the degree that I can build it to spec, but I'm going to try to maximize my profit in this process. Why are you assuming that there's a one-to-one relationship between the amount of money that's spent versus the quality of something you're getting back? The goal, again, in all of these capitalistic enterprises is to maximize profit. That includes healthcare. That includes healthcare. Meaning, you have all of these entities that are built into the healthcare system itself to get profit. Yes, healthcare is a part of that, but you have a system that is designed to reap profits. It is a capitalistic system. Injury, fuck-ups, foibles, hurts, pains, aches, whatever it is, cancer, AIDS, you're going to somebody and that person is going to see you as an item of profit. Yes, if they're a doctor, they're going to try to service you and everything else, but at the end of the day, this is still a business. It's a capitalistic system. Like, there's something inherently gross about getting rich off of somebody else's pain and misery and failures. Am I not wrong on that? The goal of healthcare should be about healthcare. And this is even after Obamacare. I thought Obamacare was supposed to fix all this. What happened? I thought Obamacare was supposed to fix all this. The utopian vision of making sure that people can still get billions of dollars off of healthcare and drug companies can still rape the public, and the public is somehow supposed to be better off. Yes, it was tepidly better off. It was tepidly better off. The problems of healthcare in our country go beyond just the supplying of healthcare itself. It's also the system that we've created around that, meaning for the patients themselves who have to deal with the medical system and have to deal with the United States government through Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare, and these agencies that deal with this. This is a fuckfest. And I'm talking about personal experiences on this. So, 2 streams of thought. The first one has to do with what is the experience of somebody who's dealing with a medical illness, dealing with the American healthcare system, versus what could be the experience. Meaning just with small changes, what radical changes. But even not necessarily taking the steps I would prefer. What are they abroad? Versus what are they here? Now, when I was younger, very, very young, I started off with an illness in my knees. Well, it's like a knee pain thing. They said it was some kind of growing injury, and because that's some kind of growing injury, it'll go away when you hit 16, 17. Just take a bunch of pain meds and, you know, do what you got to do. Take Tylenol, keep Advil constant, etc., etc., etc. So I hit 17, and I developed kidney failure. The pain in the knees stopped. Gold star for that. kidney failure kind of sucks. They said it started when I was 12, and it presented once your kidneys get to like 10%, they can no longer compensate, in which case you exhibit failure. My mom was a single parent, and in being a single parent, she, for the most part, raised me all on her own. She had family, of course, to help out, but it was her and it was me, and that was essentially the way it was. She didn't necessarily make awesome cash. She worked a low-wage job. She had a job that she worked since she was in school because she worked it for so long. She started off at such a low level that when she finished, she wasn't, doing great. But she scrimped and struggled and did what she needed to do to raise an awesome kid. Now, I would say she did an awesome fucking job parenting. She would probably say the same thing. I would say she had an awesome template to which to do a fucking awesome job because I was an odd kid, let's be honest. But she did an awesome fucking job, and my mom have an amazing bond. I've joked, it's like I know how to explain it. I always try to give ideas on this because there's no way to really verbalize it. You could only present it. It's like there's certain things where you try to touch and you try to hit, and there's no way to actually hit. There's no way to actually describe it. The only thing you can do is kind of describe a scene, and that particular scene gives it a context of what the person is talking about. The language itself is always inadequate to get across the thing. It's like you can hit near it, but the language can never actually articulate what you're feeling. It's like, how do you encapsulate what you're saying into the words themselves? And then you can't. Inevitably, you're stuck with metaphors, similes, pictures. I can show you pictures. I can give you pictures. So let's give a picture. There's a scene in Angel. And Angel is a show. It's a Buffy universe. Yeah, I use these because I think they make awesome explanations, and they're simplistic, so anybody can get their head around it. Angel was a vampire with a soul. With this vampire with a soul, he had a friend who worked with him, Fred. They fought evil together. Fred was one of the people who he rescued from a hell dimension. She loved Angel to death. Angel was a champion, a cosmic champion. Fred was injured, and something was eating her alive. Angel goes to help. They try to move heaven and earth in order to save Fred, and they get to the point where they find the place. They find a way to cure her. All right. And the person tells them, look, you can save her. You just need to take these belongings from here all the way back to where she is. With the caveat being that every human being is going to die between here to the place to which you take this device. Now, Angel at this point is racked with this, I can't do that. She's going to die. And I would make the point that says that if that was my mom, all of those people would have died. I'm saving my mama. I understand. I feel bad. I'll take the hit. My integrity is going to be besmirched, to say the least. But my mama and I are walking out of there. I'm trying to give you this impression of the relationship my mom and I have. So, I say that to say, we were close. I mean, but we were close for the same reason that people who are in battlefields are close. It's like you are in a situation with that particular person for a long period of time, and it's just you and it's that person. And then you're racked by all of this stuff. From the time I was 17 to probably the time I was maybe 28, maybe 2 or 3 major surgeries each year. Like, I'm trying to get across the fuckery that takes place. And it was one thing after the next. It was weird stuff, odd stuff, but stuff that would come up that would be major medical things. Out of the blue, 3 in the morning in the hospital for some major issue. Year after year after year. Now, you can imagine that my mom, starting off as somewhat of a basket case, grew pretty strong over this time, where you'd be like, it's 2 in the morning, hey, I'm not feeling well, okay? I'll be right there. Which hospital do you want to go to? That's what it became. That became your life. Now, the catch, that part is not the most important part, at least from the context of what we're talking about. I want to get into talking about Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and how the federal government deals with this particular apparatus dealing with the medical system. Because those two things start to work in tandem at a certain point. At 17 years old, you don't have a high school degree. You're not even out of high school. Now, the question becomes, how are you going to pay for all this? How do you pay? You have the capitalistic system. That capitalistic system tries to find ways to maximize profit. Well, you're in the medical system. How do you maximize your profit in the medical system? Well, that ends up with corporations taking over smaller clinics for the dialysis stuff, because smaller clinics, even though they may be better manned from a personal standpoint with the doctor, they can't necessarily keep up with the costs. So larger corporations gobble up smaller dialysis clinics, in which case you have these, megalithic corporations in this case. And beyond that point, once you get into the situation of illness itself, the companies themselves, they're corporations. I mean, they act like corporations. Pay staff a certain thing, maximize their particular profits of the top 1% of the corporation itself, scream about how Medicare is making changes that's adversely affecting it, because Medicare is making changes that's adversely affecting it. They're not getting a huge amount because they haven't increased a certain amount. I'm saying you have corporations that are built into this particular system, meaning much of the resources that are coming from the government to pay for the people who are doing treatments or pay for people in these medical situations, various medical situations, not just dialysis, goes to corporations. There's a medical complex. And there's this odd feedback between the two where you have these intermediaries dealing with these things that gets large amounts of cash from the United States government. As a person going through this, like I said, at 17, you don't have anything. So you're stuck with the dilemma. How do I work in this situation? Can I work in this situation? Am I well enough to work in this situation? Having surgery after surgery after surgery somewhat hits you in the knees with this idea of working. So, second question, how do you live? It's America. There's bits of the New Deal that are left. Republicans are still going after them, but there are bits of it left. How do you live? Social Security. Social Security will apply for people who are ill. Gold star. Good job, FDR. As long as you make a certain amount or below a certain threshold, you can get Medicare and you can get Medicaid. Now, here's the catch, the donut hole. The amount that you get for Social Security is like, let's say $1,200 if you're lucky. Now, that $1,200 clearly is not enough to live off. I don't know anybody who's living off of $1,200, or at the very least, you're not living well. That $1,200 also, Social Security and Medicare. Medicare is taken out of that money. So that money even is deducted even below a certain amount of debt. So let's say $1,100. That's poverty. You've ensconced poverty based upon the person being ill. I'm trying to get across just the bare bones effects of the things that we do and the policies that we take on in the United States with regards to people ill. That's poverty. Now, unless that person is living with somebody, or unless that person is shacked up with somebody else, how are they going to live? How do you live? Let's say that person says, look, fuck it. I don't want to be in this particular situation. I'm going to work. All right. If that person makes more than a certain amount, let's say the person makes more than, let's say $800, they lose Medicaid. Medicare only pays 80%. Which means that if you get hit with a surgery, if you get hit with some other bill, let's say $100,000, you have a $20,000 bill over your head. This is what people deal with every day, based on our medical system. Every day. This study is probably not even talking about that. I'm talking about the mechanics of how somebody interacts with the medical system in the United States. Not doing anything wrong, nothing that they've done to themselves. This is just the way they were made. There was a fuck up in the biology. God fucked up. Say for the moment, this person gets ill, this person gets put in the hospital. Now, there's two ways to do it. You can do it like I did it, which is essentially just suffer through the poverty while you finish your schooling. And then after you finish your schooling, say fuck all to the government and medical stuff and just get your own job, get your own insurance, and deal with the illness while you're working. Because I didn't like the poverty angle. It bugged the shit out of me. It was like, this is too much of a restriction. I'm not free in this situation. There is no such freedom in this case. And even trying to get the job and trying to work while you're ill, inevitably you get ill again, in which case you're going to lose your job. They're going to get sick of you being ill. They're going to get sick of this particular situation. They're not going to want it. And to be fair to the company, why would they? Their company, their job is to maximize their profit. If they have somebody on who's ill, it doesn't necessarily help them maximize their profit. So inevitably, out of the job market again, which means you're back into the same situation as before. Now, this is somewhat of a cycle. And I met many of people who are on dialysis who get stuck in this donut hole of sorts. It's in poverty, ensconced. Say for the moment you end up in a hospital. Capitalistic system. People need to maximize their profit, including doctors. You get ill, a doctor comes in, says, how are you doing? He says, I'm doing okay. He takes your blood pressure. He says, okay, see you later. Who's that doctor? Who the fuck knows? But you're going to get a bill from that guy for $100 for putting that thing around your cuff and doing that. You can have other doctors who are looking for reasons for surgeries. You can have some doctors who are going to be willing to do some surgeries, in the moment that they stop paying for those things in healthcare, those surgeries are going to fall away. They're incentivized to do certain things. Now, it's not necessarily saying that they're going to do surgeries so over the top, but the number is always in their heads. You've created an incentive to find stuff, to do stuff to people who may not necessarily need those things done. That is a weird system. You've created a system where drug companies are incentivized to raise the amount they're charging people for those drugs. Because what are you going to do? You need the drug, right? You're going to pay us whatever we charge you for that drug if it's $700. Now, you may dislike me for doing that, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do? Are you going to buy it or not? Especially if there's no one else who's selling this particular drug. Medicare could negotiate for those. Congress could pass a law saying that drug companies only have one vendor, that one vendor being the United States government. And that if the government, if that company wants to sell those things to anybody in the United States, you sell it to us as a whole, as the United States entirely. But that's not what takes place. That's not what takes place. We have a problem in the way we go about our affairs dealing with the medical stuff. And we're putting people through all sorts of hurdles and literally ensconcing people in poverty. That's what we're talking about. If you're ill, you're, for the most part, being ensconced in a certain amount of poverty. It's one thing if you get ill when you get older, after you've amassed a certain amount, but even then, most people make minimum wage, or not minimum wage is too strong. Most people are on a poverty wage. They're either in poverty or in a situation where they're making a poverty wage. Most jobs are service sector. 95% of the jobs that were created under Obama were service sector jobs. 60-something% of the people in the population, if they got a bill for $500, couldn't afford it. We're on a hamster wheel. This is not a situation where people are putting their nuts away. Most people are on a hamster wheel. Somebody gets cancer. Who's going to pay the bills? You're on a hamster wheel. Who's going to cover that? How we do healthcare in this country is maddening and it's ridiculous. And the idea that capitalism has to exceed even into things as personal and intimate as our physical body is distressing, to say the least. It is immensely distressing. We've created certain incentives in our system. We've created certain difficulties in the way people navigate our system. Meaning, I'm talking about the patients themselves. Those things are problematic. And those things are not necessarily seen in other countries because other countries don't necessarily create these odd and weird incentives to screw people over. And I do consider it to be somewhat of screwing people over. We're putting certain people in poverty out of policy. Like I'm trying to get this across. How many people in the country get ill for whatever reason? How many of those people get ill, let's say, through the younger period of their life? Let's say it's not even a young period of their life. If they're older, like I said, the majority of people in the country couldn't afford a $500 car note, meaning they don't have that money in the bank. They don't have savings in this way. Anything that happens to them, they're living off of their labor. Anything that happens to them, it's going to be a good day for the doctor, a good day for the person who sees them, a good day for everybody else that this particular person is sick, with the exception of that person themselves. Why is that an incentive? That's not weird. They can charge you whatever they want at that point. Hey, you've broken your arm, or you need your thumb reattached. I'll reattach your thumb, but this is how much it's going to cost. Is the person going to say no? When is the last time you asked for a price when you went to your doctor? That's slightly weird. I'm just saying, we as a country are all vulnerable. That could happen to any of us. And seeing as the overwhelming majority of us are in a situation where we don't necessarily have these massive amounts of savings and we're running from pillar to post trying to make ends meet, and many of us are in debt. Is this something that we also want to have hanging over our heads, if this is something we actually want to come together and deal with. Does capitalism needs to exceed into each and every area of our lives? 3 times more for healthcare, less return. Because the point is not healthcare. The point is the profit. Healthcare is the thing that they provide, the stupid human trick in order to get the profit. But shouldn't we have healthcare being the point of healthcare? When Obamacare came out, it didn't seem like anyone asked the most basic of questions. How do we provide healthcare for everyone in the nation? As cheap as we can provide it, but as decent as we can provide it. How do we provide it for everyone in the nation? Isn't that a starting point? Meaning, if you have a question, wouldn't the most decent and forthright way to be starting with just asking the question of how do we do it? How do we do it? What's the most cost-effective way of making sure that each and every person in this country, if you're born in this country, you have healthcare, that is your birthright, congratulations, you're a goddamn American. How do we do it? Why wasn't that question asked? That's a technical question. That's what I'm getting at. That's not a political question. I don't give a shit what your political ideology is. That's a technical question. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, somewhere in between. Whether you're Libertarian, even if you say, I don't want the government doing this, fine. But it is a technical question on how do you do it. It has nothing to do with your political ideology. What is the best way to do this? And I understand people are going to have some feelings about, well, Libertarians said this, but well, just tell me how you do it first. We can parse through the ways. Tell me how do you do it. That's a technical question. Get people on it. Try to figure out how to do it. And what they will likely tell you is, take the market out of it. Yeah, I'm that far to the left on this. Take the market out of it. Take it out. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have certain companies and everything else in the system itself. But providing the basic care for the human beings themselves, take the market out. Yes, I'm talking about a national healthcare system. I'm saying get rid of the insurance companies. If you have drug manufacturers or drug companies, those drug companies have one vendor. That is the United States government. And the United States government will make deals with those drug companies for the 300 and some odd million people that's in the country. The drug companies are going to hate it. The drug companies go fuck themselves. If they want to have business in this country, this is the deal to which they're going to have to deal with. One vendor, by law. By law. No more drug companies, or no more insurance companies, I'm sorry. Insurance companies are leeches and shouldn't exist. Get rid of them. Why are we spending money in this way? What is the dividend? How much money is an insurance company get? What percentage of overage is an insurance company get? How much is that adding to the healthcare system itself? How much? How much? These guys are getting millions of dollars. Unnecessarily millions of dollars. The overhead of Medicare, I think, last time I checked, was like 2%. Hell, fuck, say 5%. That's a massive amount of a deal over top of what these companies are doing that are fundamentally redundant. They're not needed to be in the system. And yeah, I want to get rid of the incentives that would say this particular doctor may do a particular policy. I want the incentives to be the goal of healthcare is healthcare. If you're coming here, the goal of this is to get healthcare. It's not to make a profit off of you. It's not to make money off of your back and off of your suffering, your fuck-ups and foibles and pains and aches and breaks. We're not going to take advantage of that. That's not our goal. The sake of healthcare is healthcare, not the point of healthcare being this kind of stupid human trick to get to cash. I'm trying to eliminate the motive, the profit motive in this particular system. Cash doesn't have to extend to each and everything. Even if you say, I believe in capitalism, great. At the very least, it shouldn't come here. Hands off of Medicare or medical systems. By the way, jobs. Jobs for the moment. Think about jobs. Not only is healthcare going to be cheaper under this particular model, what does your job look like when you're not paying all of that money for healthcare? Meaning you're not paying all the money for the health insurance. Health insurance is something that is given as a right at that point as an American citizen. In the same way you have teachers in public schools, you have doctors. Yes, I'm saying a radical departure from the way we do medicine in this country. Yes, I understand. Nobody is going to wave a flag for me on this. Meaning the people in this country is not necessarily going to be on my side on it. It doesn't make me wrong. It doesn't make me wrong. the cost of healthcare goes away, at least from the standpoint of you paying all that money on your bills and your check. For that matter, what does it look like when companies don't have to cover all of that massive cost of healthcare? Not to mention the increases in healthcare, the amount that healthcare goes up. What happens when it doesn't have to bear and burden of those costs? The companies abroad in Europe don't have to bear that burden. The United States has to carry that particular weight. Those companies don't have to do that. I'm trying to make this point that this affects all areas of American life, not just the betterment of the quality of life for the individual that's in this country. I'm also talking about the corporations that are in this country benefit magnificently when they don't have to deal with these healthcare costs and the way that these healthcare costs prosper in this country. I understand. People are not necessarily going to be with me on this. Fair enough. But I am talking about a radical departure in the way we do healthcare in this country. If I lived in France or Germany or even London, none of this would be an issue. None of this would have been an issue. You would have had a healthcare system where if you need healthcare, you just go get healthcare. That's it. End all be all. If I would have had to take a taxi to London to get the healthcare, they would have given me a reimbursement for the money that I paid for the taxi. Fundamental departure. A fundamental departure. We put people in dire straits, and we're weirded out, shocked that people freak out and flip out. We can be different. We don't have to do this to the way that we treat people with healthcare. We don't have to hit people over their heads just because they have some kind of abnormality or some kind of problem. We can be different on this. We are the worst in the world, or at the very least in the Western world, in healthcare. Is it not time for a change? I guess that's my point. Is it time to rethink healthcare? No, Obamacare was not a rethinking of healthcare. And it was not state taking over, socializing healthcare. What I am talking about is state taking over healthcare. What Obama did was a private corporate giveaway that had people and socialists fighting for a right-wing healthcare plan. I'll leave it at that. It's time for a change. Our healthcare system needs to change. That's the entire point of this. From the way we go about dealing with people with healthcare issues, meaning the government itself, to the healthcare system itself. All of it needs to change. It's a technical question, and how do you change it? But definitely, at the very least, agree with me that it needs to be changed. Let's see. There are people here at this time of the night. Let's see. My 25-year-old cousin was diagnosed with lupus, and they fired him from a new job. Now he's learning how to cope with the physical aspects of the disease and the financial issues as well. She was not sure which was worse. I don't like limitation, man. I agree with you. Crystal Colon. Limitation was worse. Limitation was worse. For me, limitation was worse. Like, people... I've psychoanalyzed myself. My wife hates it when I do that to her friends or family or something like that, trying to get into people's head. But I do the same thing to myself. I don't leave myself from that. And I ask myself, why on earth do you have a particular perspective like this? Like, what is the thing that's generated your perspective, especially with this thing of travel and being left-leaning from the standpoint of freedom and the way that I define it. And I realized that this wasn't necessarily special or anything else. I had a workable point of view, like everyone else has a certain workable point of view. That workable point of view had certain factors, limitation being one of those factors. There's a scene in Django where Django comes out when he goes into a clothing store after being a slave for God knows how long. And he picks the brightest, loudest suit that he could find as he was riding on a horse. He's overcompensating. He doesn't have to pick that suit. He's picking that suit because he gets the first. It's like your first time behind the wheel and you're slamming on the gas and you're going 90 miles an hour because it's your first time behind the wheel. Or it's like you finding a rapper and he gets his first $1 million check and he buys a house for $1 million. It's overcompensation. It's not having something or being restricted by something. And because you're restricted by something, you respond as the opposite. Men Googling women's breasts because women cover their breasts. Or in other nations, you have people like looking at people's ankles because they try to cover their entire body. A lot of this stuff has to do with the way we organize our society, the way we ourselves operate culturally. So in my case, limitation. Like, you're limited by your financial situation because, yeah, but you've just been diagnosed with an illness. You don't have the capacity to work. You're in and out of surgeries. And you're limited by the physicality itself. Meaning, you can't go but too far. You're stuck on a particular machine. You're stuck in this particular hospital. You're stuck on this particular floor at a hospital. People are bugging the shit out of you. You don't want to deal with this particular thing or that particular thing. Yeah, both are bad. Both are bad. And those are one of those things we drop on people. It's like, why are you punishing people for being human beings? And Democrats are so weak. They're so weak. There's such a detachment from what people go through and experience on a normal day-to-day basis versus what the political leaders talk about. What do you know? If you ever watch Jeremy Corbyn and Prime Minister Questions, he takes questions from his constituents and read those questions aloud. And that was revolutionary. That was revolutionary. Actually representing the people who put him in that office. Revolutionary. Look, we should not be gutting Medicare. We should not be gutting Social Security. If anything, we should be expanding those things. And we should be making sure that people don't necessarily have to live in poverty just because they get a medical illness. Shit, man. I agree with Crystal Cole. "24-hour lib. Stop printing those protest signs." Joshua Ridshaw. Lorms. Hey, you high. Exactly. The complications of what was a simple infection is now chronic. Multi-system damage destroys a person's hopes of ever getting taken care of. Financial ruin. Not to mention, think of the people who don't go because of the bills. Think of the people who don't go because of the bills. I worked at a company, and think about this one. So I worked at a company. I finished school, get a transplant, finish school, transplant fails, start back working for a company, doing software. And I'm with them for about a year. And I started having transplant complications. Now, the time period for the Medicare thing went, if I'm not mistaken, for about a year. So immediately when I lost that job, when I was fired in the hospital, Medicare ended same month. Because it was, Medicare gave you a certain window. Well, the window just so happened to end at the exact same month in which I was fired. So now it's kidney failure, no insurance, not even Medicare. The rules and regulations, like it's a fucking horrible situation. Whereas if it was, congratulations, you're American, you have healthcare, none of this stuff would apply. You wouldn't have all these industries and everything else that are built around this, these vultures. You have one system of Medicare. You go into the hospital when you need healthcare, you walk out when you don't. Yeah. It makes people's lives difficult. Joshua Renshaw. Jamal really makes me want to run for Congress. I would have to show with the same format as him, and people could log on and talk directly to their representative. That would be fucking awesome. Yeah, it would be fucking awesome. Joshua Renshaw. Jamal, have you ever watched the Rogan podcast with Mel Gibson and Dr. Jordan on Meshmal stem cell research? It would both interest you and enrage you. They keep that kind of research and treatment from the American public. It is somewhat enraging. So I've seen some research in some of the laboratories, but one was in, I think it was somewhere in California, where they were talking about this kind of internal dialysis mechanism. It's fucking fascinating. I've seen some other stuff on stem cells, but they never bring that stuff loud and out. And the clinics that do stuff like that sometimes come across as extremely shady. It's like, give us $1,200 and we'll do this sketchy treatment that hasn't necessarily been verified by anybody, but hey, take your chance. And you have people who are so desperate and wanting to get something that they allow that want to overcome that thing of skepticism of, wait a minute, this guy seems a little shady to me. Yeah, Joshua, I feel you, man. I've seen Joe Rogan's podcast a few times. I don't necessarily watch it regularly, but I've seen it a few times. But I'll check it out. I'll check it out. MESENCHYMAL. I've never heard of that, though. I know they've been using stem cells to make all sorts of weird shit, like making an ear or something like that. Look, every cell in our body has a blueprint for everything else in our body. all started with one. That cell had to have a blueprint, otherwise a cell couldn't replicate. It's a fucking fantastic machine. Call it what it is. Call it what it is. People don't like to hear like the machine thing because it feels like it's like, oh, I have free will, I have thoughts, I have emotions and everything else. You don't really have free will. You're constrained by your environment. The choices that you make are influenced and given to you by your environment. It's not you. It's like you have free will within a constrained space. You have a decision space. Okay, you have a decision space. Everything has a decision space. You have thoughts. Fair enough. Everything to some degree is thoughts. They may not necessarily be able to process them and talk. But your dog can go through a maze. He loves you, or at the very least, he likes you. Come on. He loves his kids. What's the difference? I think we make the distinction between human thought and intellect. I guess I'm less sold on this free will thing. That's all. I'm less sold on the free will thing. But I'll check this out, man. I definitely check this out. But yeah, it does enrage you sometimes when you see something, you're like, why isn't this out? Yeah, every cell in your body is a blueprint for everything else in your body. So yeah, take one cell. How does a cell figure out how to do that? And the moment that you figure out how that machine does that, oh God, like imagine what you can do. Like scientist says, oh, we can do this, this, and this, and we can get this to build a heart. We can get this to build a liver, a lung. Fuck, that would be amazing. That would be absolutely amazing. Because otherwise, you have transplants. Transplants feel like vultures in a weird way. It's like you're like a vampire. Somebody dies. You're preying on the dead body in a sense. Those transplants are, they change your life in an odd way. As long as they work. When they don't work, they're a pain in the ass. The stem cells that we have been told about has a purpose it wants to do. Become a baby. It's super expensive because of the treatment they must do to the cells so it won't create cancerous cells. Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Those cells can for the most part become anything, but there's some gimmick or trick or something that's involved that's somewhat complicated to keep them from becoming cancerous cells. It's like, how do you differentiate from one versus the other? Yeah, it's like you're breaking the code of the human body or breaking the code of the cell. It's fascinating. In lieu of universal healthcare, universal basic income could be tied to average cost of healthcare per individual. Most shalaks. That's interesting. That's interesting. I know some people are against the universal basic income thing. I don't like the name, but I like the concept. But it has to be tied to a job thing. Has to be. And it's not because I think people are like jobs are necessary and awesome. You know, China can supply all of the things that we need. Let's be honest. Like they have this idea of this insane thing of growth forever. Well, the goal is not necessarily growth forever. The goal is to make sure people have the things that they need, have access to the things that they need to live their lives. But yeah. I know a lot of people are not sold on universal basic income. The United States invests in all sorts of things. Like my argument for something like that would be, well, look, you guys are taking out resources. In addition to taking out resources, we've invested in things like the internet. We've invested in some of the solar power. Well, we want to return on our investment. The return on the investment is essentially what we are giving to the American public. Make this thing of kind of like a business thing of some degree. The things that we invest in, things that we support, we get a kickback on those things. Push that out to the American public itself. That way, it's not necessarily people are just getting something for nothing. It's they're getting something and they're cognitively associating the thing that they're getting with the resources that are being taken by corporate America. I love that idea. I love it. It's the politics of it. That's the politics in a sense. That's the argument I would make. That's the way I would tie it. I don't want right-wingers saying, oh, this is giving away. No. I want right-wingers to say, well, yeah, these guys are using our resources. We should get something back for them using our resources. That seems fair. That seems fair. That's the way I want it. All right, I'm not going to keep this one long because it is like 3:30 in the morning. So I'm going to end this. I have a video that I really want to do with Noam Chomsky having a conversation with Christopher Hedges. Oh, it's an awesome conversation. I'm going to end this, and I still may really do that one. So maybe. Might save it. Nah, maybe. Depends on how I'm feeling. But I'm going to end this one. Guys, thank you all for showing up. Like I said, it's 3:30 in the morning. I appreciate you guys for hanging out with me. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. And Joshua, thank you very much, man. I hope I addressed it. Jamal, have you ever watched the Rogan podcast with Mel Gibson and Dr. Ridorian on mesenchymal stem cell research? It would be both interest to you and enrage you. And keep in mind that type of research treatment from American public. They keep that research from the American public. Yeah, man. I'm going to check that out. I'm fascinated by this stuff because I was always curious about. It's like they've been talking about stem cell research for God knows how long. What have been the strides that they made with it? What have been the strides? They have to have done something, some research somewhere. I'm always on the lookout for people doing research into like kidney failure stuff and that type of stuff. Stem cells fall in line with that, with this idea of, again, the cell has access to pretty much everything in your body. Can they use it in order to create a new kidney cell or a new kidney itself? So I will check him out. Alrighty, guys. Have a good night. And I may see you again in about 20 minutes. May. I'm emphasizing may.